Hey everyone, I'm Rather Incoherent. This is an off-channel recap for the Bloodborne alpha test I just did off the channel with my tabletop group. We were a 3-player group consisting of Daniella Reyes, Ursula Downs, and Joe Diamond. It's always Joe Diamond, isn't it? Now, Daniella Reyes was our main fighter. This is the first time we played her in a full campaign. She was done at like 20 experience. I've just been buying stuff to make use of my time. Like when these Time-Worn brands were machetes, the character played almost the same. It's not a big difference. Time-Worn brand is really just an upgrade to scale those machetes into the in-game scenarios. By and large, the deck was done a long time ago, and this 14 experience upgrade probably made the deck worse. I just really wanted to try out Kachi, E-Spank, and Fickle Fortune. I've got a whole video coming out tomorrow on those things. Long story short, Kachi E-Spank is good at drawing cards faster, but she's not good at controlling the timing of the limits. She actually kind of sucks at that. Because what you want to do with her is every time you draw a card that's not exactly what you need, you just throw it beneath her, immediately draw another one. So she digs through your deck faster. And then if you're someone like Yorick who recurs stuff from their graveyard, she's also real good at dying to give you 2/2 soak, and then throwing 5 cards in your discard pile, which is very nice. Fickle Fortune, if you're in a campaign where you want to heal 3 damage and 3 horror, it has a home in every character. Now, usually you're not. There might be a specific finale, like Before the Black Throne, where you look at this and you're like, oh hey, that heals the entire team for Nazathoth slap, doesn't it? And suddenly you want this card specifically as counter tech to a scenario. And it did perform really well in the scenario that we were playing it in. Like, it was literally the reason we won, probably. That's how much of an impact it has. Because in the places where it has a home, it's the best card in the game. Heal players times 6 damage and horror is an insane effect, and it doesn't even cost you an action. It costs you a round. When's the last time you cared about the Doom Clock? As for Daniela as a whole, she's a top tier character, a wonderful fighter. She's incredibly strong. Her stat line is the Harvey stat line. As of now, this is the most optimized stat line they've yet printed, and I hope it always will be. I don't want to see somebody get printed with 2 5s, man. I don't want to see somebody get printed with a 0. I don't want a better stat line than this to come out. I really don't. Her stat line is insane. Her soak split is almost perfect. You prefer 7 and 7, but once you start thinking about it in the thick of it, there's no difference in 8-6 or 7-7. They're both going down to 6-6 all the same. So she's just insanely efficient. Her ability has no limits per phase or turn. So you can be in situations where like a swarming 1 health enemy can't be dealt with. You engage that enemy, they all die. Yeah, they all hit you. Build your deck to live through it. You'll be fine. It's not a problem. Run Hallowed Mirror. Buy Fickle Fortune, I guess. Don't do that one. But you can easily build a Daniela that can afford to abuse the shit out of this ability, and it's one of the strongest abilities in the game. Someone at my table said that Daniela's ability is basically the fight equivalent of Rex's ability. I was like, huh, you're right. That really highlights how much worse Vicious Blow is than Deduction, doesn't it? Because holy shit, she is not even close to being a Rex in terms of overall power level, but she is an absolute monster all the same. As for the deck, it's just really simple. You run the fight stuff that you can. The original deck is obviously much more blue than this. I'll go down to my level 0 deck in a second. You run the fight stuff that you can, and you fill it out with invincibility from red and as much draw as you can throw in the deck. We've got Live and Learns and Take Hearts as our level 0 red cards, consistency on fight actions, draw, and economy. We're running out of Crossroads for more draw. We originally had Darings and Guard Dogs. You shouldn't have cut those. This was just to test other cards. These really should still be in the deck. It's just like a very basic high-tempo deck. You search with Backpack, find a weapon, play your allies, hit dudes. That's pretty much it. Very simple character, very, very strong. As always, I'll be showing the level 0 deck for my deck. I don't have the level 0 decks readily available for my teammates, and you can see basically the same shit. I took In the Thick of It for At a Crossroads and a Jessica Hyde, and the reason I'm taking Jessica Hyde's in level 0, which seems like a little bit of a random thing to pick, is because we're playing a campaign where we were able to get a weapon in scenario 1 where you take a damage to deal 3 damage, which is very direct synergy with Jessica Hyde. I wanted to test that out. Normally, I'd probably be looking at like 2 At a Crossroads and, I don't know, something else, not that. Maybe I would get Jessica Hyde. What I'd probably do is just get 2 beat cops and leave my 3rd experience unspent to get a more optimal 2nd upgrade, because she's so strong in scenario 1, you just don't need the full In the Thick of It immediately. And you can get by without In the Thick of It. I considered that. I was like, what if instead of In the Thick of It, I just had more health to use my ability more freely? And there's definitely merit to doing that. But on the whole, Daniella Reyes is just a very simple, very straightforward, and incredibly powerful character. I've played her on the channel before. I did it for my tutorial series for Arkham, because she's so simple that she's a great introduction for new characters, and you really can't do anything to make her complicated. Now, speaking of overcomplicating things, let's talk about Ursula. I pathfind out an Eon chart back in to investigate twice without spending an action Downs. Because yeah, Ursula moves around a lot. She throws clues off of locations, she investigates a lot. And is she good? Yeah, she's very good. I don't know if I agree with all the cards in this deck, but hey, you give somebody who doesn't play Seeker 65 experience, you end up with a mess. Now, how do I feel about Ursula? Every time I see her, I think she's great. 65 experience, you end up with real weird things. You end up with decks that have way too many cards in them. It's kind of weird that Faye made it in. But like, yeah, it's just a really strong deck. You move around a lot, you get a lot of clues. I'm not sure I would build it exactly like this, but you would see a shitload of the same cards because this is the general archetype Ursula always goes down. Very strong investigator. Every time I see her get played, I'm like, man, are the characters near her on the tier list really at the same level as her? And in this case, I was like, no, they aren't. I moved her up substantially into the low end of too strong. Because previously she was down here like next to Silas and Carson and Finn and Ashcan. The Ursula hate just keeps me ranking her lowly every time. And then I see her play and like, man, what is everyone talking about? She's nuts. She's incredible. She's definitely one of those characters that will scale a lot worse on higher difficulties. But as long as we're talking about standard, this character is insane. And I don't really have too much more to say than that. Investigate after you move is not too far off of Rex's ability, and she performs not too far off of Rex. She's definitely worse. I think her card pool is definitely worse, but she also gets 14 free experience, and that's worth a lot in Seeker. She's just a very strong Seeker. And if you're going to emphasize any one thing as a gimmick, moving is a great thing to emphasize. And lastly, Joe Diamond versus Werewolves. If you read the other title, it was Bob Haters in the chat. We played the first two scenarios as double Kluber. It was a very fight-heavy custom campaign. That was a mistake. They went on vacation. We restarted when they got back. He switched over to Joe Diamond so he could flex fight. How'd the decks do? Well, really, really well. I'm surprised to see no Michael Lay, no Reliable, considering how much fighting was in the campaign. But that just goes a long way to show how much work Daniela was doing that he didn't feel the need to upgrade those cards. This Joe deck fights really well. Cutting Machete for Survival Knife is great. I think I'd have done a lot of different upgrades, but I'd have been, again, in the very same ballpark as this deck. And it just did really well. It was borderline Mythos immune because it has Dream Diary and a very expendable soak assets. It's super consistent because of all this draw. It gets these cards out and then it just like investigates at reasonable numbers, plays Deduction several times, ignores the Mythos deck. As far as flex characters go, Joe's a good one. He's also probably the only character in the game running 2 copies of Ever Vigilant, unironically, but hey, here we are. And this is very similar to the Joe deck we just ran in Innsmouth. It's, God, it might be like 3 or 4 cards off. It's gotta be like the same deck, right? And now that we played it in a super fight-heavy campaign instead of Innsmouth with an annual show, we got to see that, yeah, this deck's really good at fighting. Vicious Blows, Practice Makes Perfect, Machete is good enough. If he had a less valuable fighter or was expecting to have to fight 4-fist enemies himself all the time, we would have seen the Michael Lay, we would have seen Reliables, other stuff would have been cut somewhere. But this deck is just very, very good at flex finding and gets more than enough clues to carry its weight. It's a great deck. I'm very happy with how Joe performed. And that's it for today. Just a short recap of the decks we just played off the channel. I hope you found them interesting. If you did, like, comment, subscribe. All that stuff really does help the channel grow. And I'll see you in the next one.